Canada didn't raise its voice. It didn't launch threats. It didn't even call a press conference. It just moved, swiftly and quietly, passing 7 calculated actions behind the scenes. Now, the fallout is unfolding, not in headlines, but in factories, farms, hotels, and airports. This isn't some political performance. It's a realignment, and it's already costing billions. In just 6 months, over $12 billion has vanished. Truck traffic is down 37%. And Canadian airlines have cut more than 320,000 seats on US-bound flights, a collapse no tourism board can spin. If you live in Florida, Michigan, New York, or even a quieter state like Vermont or Kentucky, the impact might already be on your doorstep. Liquor is being pulled from shelves. Bookings are drying up, imports are stalling. And what used to be routine cross-border trade is now a legal minefield. So what exactly did Canada do? And why are these 7 states bracing for the worst? That's what we're about to unpack. One action at a time, one collapsing state at a time. If you're in one of these places, this isn't just a headline, it's a warning. Hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment if the signs are already showing where you live. Let's get into it. In just a matter of weeks, Canada enacted 7 targeted actions. None of them made front-page headlines. None needed to. Each was a strategic blow, designed to protect Canadian interests and expose America's vulnerabilities. These weren't symbolic gestures. They were enforceable, deliberate, and already shifting the balance. And now, we're seeing the fallout. Let's break it down. Now there's a digital services tax, aimed squarely at US tech giants like Google and Meta. A travel advisory followed, quietly backed by the Canadian Teachers Federation, urging citizens to avoid certain US states. Then came the tariffs: steel, vehicles, bourbon, all facing 25% penalties. Ontario and British Columbia rolled out procurement bans, cutting US firms off from public contracts worth billions. At the same time, a consumer boycott swept the country, liquor stores, hotels, and restaurants pulling US products without waiting for policy. Then came the pressure on energy exports, with public calls to restrict oil and electricity flowing into hostile states. And finally, a collapse in cross-border travel, auto trips down 40%, flight bookings down over 70%, and Canadians simply choosing not to return. Individually, these might look like disconnected policies, but together, they form a legal and economic firewall. And the US states most dependent on Canada? They're the ones feeling it first. Let's start the countdown. Number 1, New York. New York doesn't flinch easily. Finance, tourism, tech, culture, it leads the world. But even empires can bleed. Before the fallout, over 3.5 million Canadians visited New York every year. They filled hotels in Manhattan, restaurants in Buffalo, shopping centers in Niagara Falls. Now, that flow has collapsed. Since Canada's updated travel advisories, bookings from Canadian travelers have dropped by nearly 30%. Tour buses sit idle. Hotel packages are getting canceled. And federal funding that once promoted New York City in Canadian media? Gone. But tourism is just the start. Canada's digital platform tax has hit hard in Manhattan, where ad agencies, data firms, and fintech platforms are losing Canadian contracts overnight. Budgets are being rerouted to Europe and domestic providers. And Wall Street? It's starting to notice. Then there's trade. In 2024, New York exported $17.4 billion in goods to Canada, and another $12.2 billion in services. That's a major share of the state's entire export economy. Now, those shipments are hitting new friction at the border, slowed by evolving standards, increased scrutiny, and quiet pushback from Canadian regulators. This isn't noise, it's pressure, legal, targeted, and unrelenting. And even a city like New York can only absorb so many blows. Number 2, Florida. Florida used to be Canada's second home. Sun, beaches, winter retreats, millions made the trip south. No US state depended more on Canadian tourists, and no state is losing more now. In 2025, return trips by air and car have plunged. Over $6 billion in annual Canadian spending is under threat. Tour companies have canceled entire blocks of seasonal bookings. Resorts in Naples, Sarasota, and Fort Lauderdale are sitting half empty, and Florida's tourism board is quietly bracing for its worst winter in over a decade. But it's not just tourism. Canada's retaliatory tariffs are hitting citrus hard. Orange juice exports have dropped, squeezed by new restrictions and pricing disadvantages. In Polk County, fruit processors are already cutting hours and warning of layoffs. Even Florida's cruise ports are feeling the chill, as Canadian bookings slump under new taxes and travel warnings. Behind it all is a shift in perception. Teacher unions and travel groups in Canada now advise caution. Some insurers are tightening coverage for long stays, and Florida, once seen as easy and familiar, is now viewed as uncertain and risky. Florida once sold sunshine. Now it's selling hesitation. And in 2025, that may be the one thing it can't afford to lose. Number 3, Michigan. Michigan isn't just feeling the fallout, it's absorbing the full weight of it. No U.S. state trades more with Canada than Michigan. In 2024 alone, it exported over $28 billion in goods north of the border. Auto parts, steel, engines, energy, machinery. This wasn't just trade, it was lifeblood. Now, that lifeblood is under siege. Canada's retaliatory tariffs are disrupting the auto corridor. Factories in Detroit, Flint, and Lansing are seeing canceled orders, late shipments, and frozen contracts. Parts inventories are thinning. Overtime hours are gone, and manufacturing towns are bracing for another blow. Meanwhile, the Ambassador Bridge, once a symbol of seamless trade, is now backed up with trucks stalled by inspections, paperwork, and policy shifts. Every delay costs money. Every missed shipment deepens the damage. Tourism is fading too. Port Huron, Sault Ste. Marie, Traverse City, all reporting a steep drop in Canadian visitors. Local hotels, restaurants, and outlet stores are struggling. And in Ann Arbor, tech firms are watching Canadian contracts disappear as new digital laws push clients elsewhere. Michigan wasn't just a border state. It was the handshake, the bridge, the bond. Now, even that is breaking. Number 4, Maine. Maine doesn't boast flashy skylines or global influence. It lives off something simpler: Canadian weekend trips, gas stops, and cozy motel nights. For decades, Canadian visitors were the backbone of its border towns. But now, that connection is unraveling fast. The collapse isn't loud. It's happening in shuttered motels, empty diners, and quiet gas stations, all waiting for customers who never showed up. In May 2025, Canadian return trips by car into the U.S. dropped by 38% year-over-year. In towns like Calais, Houlton, and Old Orchard Beach, shop owners say this is the worst tourism season they've ever seen. Worse than COVID, said one store owner. Old Orchard estimates 30 to 40% of seasonal tourism revenue comes from Canadians. Without them, business has vanished. No Canadians, no business. Very tough, he said. Across the state, pizza shops, gas stations, and hotels are cutting staff or closing early. And some are now asking whether the Canadian relationship, once friendly and free-flowing, will ever return. This isn't a dip in demand, it's a deep freeze. And for Maine's tourism towns, the damage may be permanent. Number 5, Kentucky. Kentucky may not sit on the border, but the impact of Canada's response is hitting it right at the core. Canada is Kentucky's top export market, buying over $9.3 billion in goods in 2024 alone. Now that flow is being squeezed. Retaliatory tariffs from Canada are already hurting Kentucky's aluminum and automotive exports. Shipments that once moved freely are facing higher costs, contract delays, and tighter margins. But it's the bourbon industry, a point of pride and identity, that's taking the deepest hit. Canadian liquor stores and hotel bars are pulling Kentucky labels from their shelves, not just because of tariffs, but because of anger. Across the country, Canadians are boycotting U.S. brands, and bourbon is one of the first casualties. In Bardstown and Louisville, distilleries are reporting declining orders, rising inventories, and a tightening grip on production schedules. Some have already paused hiring plans ahead of the fall season. The concern isn't just economic, it's political. Governor Andy Beshear warned these tariffs would bring significant harm, calling it a betrayal of voters who expected trade, not rising prices and uncertainty. For workers, farmers, and families who depend on cross-border trade, the pressure is no longer a warning. It's reality. Number 6. Minnesota. Minnesota shares more than just a border with Canada. It relies heavily on it for energy, tourism, and trade. But those connections are starting to unravel. First, power. Minnesota depends on Manitoba hydroelectricity. But with rising political friction, pressure is mounting in Canada to rethink energy exports. That supply is no longer guaranteed. And if that supply tightens, electricity prices in northern Minnesota could surge, straining households and squeezing small manufacturers already operating on razor-thin margins. Then tourism. More than half of Minnesota's international tourists come from Canada. But since Canada issued new travel advisories, backed by caution from national organizations, bookings have plunged. Small towns across the Boundary Waters and North Shore are now reporting their worst summer in over a decade. And trade is suffering too. Minnesota's exports, from machinery and medical equipment to cereals and iron products, are now facing longer inspections, tighter standards, and shifting Canadian demand. What once moved smoothly across the border now stalls in red tape and uncertainty. Minnesota doesn't make headlines, but when energy, tourism, and trade all crack at once, the damage runs deep, and the unraveling has just begun. Number 7. Vermont. Vermont wasn't supposed to be a casualty. It didn't raise tariffs. It didn't play politics. It simply opened its doors to Canadians. For decades, this was one of the most crossed and trusted borders in North America. Tourists came for the snow, the syrup, the stillness, and they came often. Now, they're not coming at all. In 2025, hotel bookings by Canadians are down 45%. Credit card spending has dropped 36%. Towns like Newport and Darby Line are watching inns sit empty and ski lodges quietly cut staff. But this isn't just economics. It's personal. One local governor said it best. It's not the tariffs. It's the hurt pride of Canadian citizens. And with Donald Trump publicly calling for Canada to become the 51st state, that pride has turned to distance. Canadian travel groups have flagged the U.S. as culturally unstable. Even teachers' unions are urging families to rethink their trips. Vermont didn't change, but the mood did. And in this peaceful border state where trade and trust once flowed freely, the silence now feels like a goodbye. Canada's new actions aren't symbolic. They're strategic, permanent. And for these 7 states, the unraveling is only beginning. If you're seeing the signs where you live, drop a comment. Share this with someone who needs to know. And subscribe, because this story isn't over, not even close.